Imagine logging into Google Street View, just casually browsing your old college town, maybe reminiscing about the good times. What are the odds you'd spot something that would shatter 6 years of painful uncertainty for a desperate father? That's exactly what happened in Aurora County. And it all started with two college students, Sarah Thompson and May Chin, leaving their dorm at Bright College for a normal Friday night out, a night that would never end. April 9, 2010, was supposed to be simple. Just two 20-year-old friends heading to a club called Chrome, the kind of night they'd done 100 times before. Sarah texted her dad, Mark Thompson, around 10:47 p.m. Out with May. Don't wait up, Dad, love you. It was the last anyone heard. From them, they simply vanished. No witnesses, no calls, no ATM transactions, nothing. Just gone. Their dorm room was left exactly as they'd left it. Sarah's textbook still open. May's coffee mug still half full. It was like they'd stepped through a door and never come out the other side. 4. Mark Thompson. Those next 6 years were a living nightmare. Every day was a battle. Every phone ring, every knock on the door, a jolt of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the call that would bring his daughter home. He scoured the news, joined support groups, became an expert in missing persons cases, all while clinging to the tiniest thread of hope that Sarah was still alive. Meanwhile, May Chin's parents, the Chins, faced a different kind of agony, the certainty that their daughter was gone, but with no body, no proof, no closure, just an endless, aching void. The whole town moved on, but the Thompsons and the Chins couldn't. The case went cold. Leads dried up. Hope became a fragile thing, carefully tended but barely surviving. And then, out of nowhere, a miracle disguised as a routine Google mapping car ride through Aurora County in June 2010 turned everything upside down. Someone, just browsing Street View for who knows what reason, noticed something odd. A man, seemingly struggling, loading something white into the trunk of his car in an alley near where the girls were last seen. It was a tiny detail, a ghost from the past, but it was enough to crack open a case everyone thought was dead and buried. That single image, that accidental digital breadcrumb, sent detectives racing back to that alley. What they found in the sewer system was May Chin. Her body, preserved in plastic, confirmed the worst fears of her family and reignited the desperate search for Sarah. The discovery was devastating for the Chins, but for Mark Thompson, it was a double-edged sword. The relief that it wasn't Sarah was immediately followed by a crushing guilt and a renewed, almost unbearable hope. If May was dead, did that mean Sarah was still alive somewhere? The Google Street View footage suggested the killer had made a mistake, a slip-up moving the body months after the initial disappearance. It meant he was still out there, and maybe, just maybe, Sarah was too. The discovery sent shockwaves through the Aurora County Police Department. Detective Rodriguez, taking over the reopened case, realized this changed everything. The man in that grainy photo became their primary focus. Who was he? Why was he moving a body 2 months after the fact? The timestamp, June 15, 2010, was crucial. It meant the investigation wasn't just about finding Sarah anymore. It was about stopping a killer who had been free and brazen enough to move a body in broad, well, digital daylight. The pressure was immense. Mark Thompson, fueled by a mixture of grief, guilt, and that flickering hope, couldn't sit still. He started retracing Sarah's last steps, haunting the places she'd been, desperate for any clue the original investigation might have missed. His drive past the old club, now shuttered, past the familiar student hangouts, inevitably led him back to one place that had always lingered in the background of the original investigation, Crossroads Bar. It was just a typical college dive, or so it seemed, owned by a man named Pete Garrison. It had been checked thoroughly back in 2010. Nothing then, but now, with May's body found and that Google image pointing to someone local, everything looked different. The past had a way of warping the present, making the innocent seem sinister. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about that bar, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Just as these thoughts swirled in his mind, his phone buzzed. An unknown number, a message that would pull him, and the entire case, into a terrifying new direction. Mr. Thompson, I saw the news about May Chin. I'm devastated. I own Crossroads Bar on University Avenue. I know police talked to us back in 2010, but I recently had a conversation with a former bartender who worked that night. He mentioned something about serving 2 Asian girls matching Sarah and May's description. He didn't think much of it at the time, but after seeing today's news, I felt I had to reach out. Would you be willing to meet? I'd prefer to discuss this with you before contacting police. The message trailed off, but the implication was clear. A witness, a lead. After 6 years, Mark stared at the screen, his heart hammering. Could this be it? Could this finally be the break they needed? Or was it something far more dangerous? A trap set by someone who had been watching, waiting, for 6 long years. Mark stared at that text message on his phone, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged animal. Pete Garrison. The name felt wrong, like a piece of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. He remembered the initial investigation, How every lead had been chased, every business scrutinized. Crossroads Bar had been on that list. Detective Morrison, the lead back then, had been thorough. Mark was sure of it, so why now? Why reach out like this, with a story that sounded increasingly shaky the more Mark thought about it? The rational part of his mind, the part that had kept him going for 6 years, screamed at him to walk away. Call Detective Rodriguez. Let the professionals handle it. But that tiny, desperate part, the part that had kept him scanning crowds and checking missing persons boards long after hope should have died, that part fixated on the tantalizing possibility. A witness, someone who served them that night. Details, specifics, it was more than he'd had in years. What if Tommy Chen, this mysterious former bartender, really did remember something crucial? What if this was the thread that finally led to Sarah? He drove toward Crossroads Bar, his hands tight on the wheel. The familiar weight of guilt settled in his stomach again, the relief that it was May's body found, not Sarah's. It was a feeling he'd carried for 6 years, a shameful secret joy that his daughter might still be alive. The Chens had lost their only child, and here he was, selfishly clinging to the slimmest chance. He pushed the thought away. He had to focus. Pete's message had said the bar. He pulled up, noting the place looked exactly the same, that same slightly worn green awning. The parking lot was mostly empty. Mark pushed through the heavy door, the bell chiming dully overhead. The dim interior was just as he remembered from 2010, worn burgundy bar stools, faded sports memorabilia, the lingering scent of stale beer, and something else, something almost chemical. Behind the bar stood a man, maybe early 50s, stocky, with thinning hair and a practiced smile. Mark assumed this was Pete Garrison, Mr. Thompson. The man's voice was warm, almost too warm. "I'm Pete. Thank you for coming so quickly." He gestured to the bar. "Can I get you something? Coffee? Water?" "Just water, thanks," Mark replied, his eyes scanning the room. Nothing seemed out of place, yet something felt off. The lighting seemed dimmer somehow, more oppressive. Pete slid a glass of water across the bar, his smile never wavering. "I imagine today's been quite a shock. Finding out about May after all this time, double quotes." Mark took a sip, his throat dry. "Look, about this bartender." He got straight to the point. "Tommy Chen, you said he remembered Sarah and May, right?" "Yes." Pete nodded eagerly. "Tommy, good kid, worked here for a few years. We were catching up last week, and he just remembered. Strange how these things come back, isn't it?" After 6 years, he paused, his eyes flicking nervously towards a security camera in the corner. Did they find much evidence with May's body? Mark frowned. Pete's questions felt invasive, prying. Why was he so interested in the details of the investigation? "They're still processing everything. Listen, can I get Tommy's contact information? I'd like to talk to him directly." Pete's smile faltered for just a second. "Oh, Tommy moved out west, Colorado, I think, or maybe Arizona. We lost touch after he moved." He scratched his head, but he was very specific about that night. Wrote it down, actually. He disappeared through a door marked office and returned with a crumpled piece of notebook paper. Mark took it. The handwriting was hurried but legible. April 9, 2010. 2 Asian girls, early 20s, one wearing white skirt with pink top ordered vodka cranberry, other in jeans and blue sweater, ordered rum and coke. Mentioned coming from Chrome, left around 1:30 a.m. Mark looked up, suspicion hardening in his gut. These details were incredibly specific for a memory supposedly dredged up from a casual phone call 6 years later. This is very detailed for something remembered recently. Some people just have minds for that kind of thing, Pete said quickly, his eyes darting again, this time towards a heavy steel door near the restrooms, marked storage, employees only. Unlike the other doors, this one had a small, red electronic keypad lock, its light glowing dully in the bar's dim light. Mark noticed it immediately. Why would a bar need that level of security for storage? He was about to press Pete further when the bar owner's phone buzzed loudly on the counter. Pete glanced at it, his face going pale. "Excuse me," he muttered, stepping away to answer. Mark couldn't hear the conversation, but Pete's posture became increasingly agitated. He kept glancing at Mark, then towards the front windows. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket, an unknown number. He stepped away, towards the restrooms, trying to get some distance. "Mr. Thompson, it's Detective Rodriguez. Where are you?" "I'm at Crossroads Bar. The owner, Pete Garrison, contacted me. Claims a former bartender remembered Sarah and May." Mark kept his voice low. There was a pause. "What kind of details?" "He gave me a note with specific descriptions of what they were wearing, what they ordered. It feels, off. Too convenient. And he's been asking weird questions about the evidence found with May." "Mr. Thompson, do not engage with him further. Stay where you are. We're checking his background now, and we're sending a unit." Mark looked back towards the bar. Pete was ending his call, his face flushed. He looked up and met Mark's eyes, his practiced smile replaced by something harder, more calculating. Pete, Mark said, raising his voice slightly. I should probably take this note to Detective Rodriguez. Pete's expression shifted instantly, panic flashing across his features. Wait, maybe ... Maybe we should verify everything first. Make sure the details are accurate. I might have more records at home, old security footage, employment schedules. Why don't you come back tomorrow? Give me time to dig through everything properly. Mark studied him. The desperation was palpable now. Pete wasn't just eager to help, he was terrified of the police getting involved. I appreciate your help, but I really should, please, Pete interrupted, his voice almost pleading. Just give me tonight. I want to be sure before we get the police involved. For Sarah's sake, Mark nodded slowly, though every instinct screamed at him to run. All right, I'll think about it. He pocketed the note and headed for the door, feeling Pete's eyes burning into his back. Outside, he got into his car and immediately called Rodriguez back. He just tried to get me to come back tomorrow. He's definitely hiding something. Did he ask you to keep this between you two? Yeah, said he wanted to verify details before involving the police. Stay in your car. A unit is 2 minutes out. We're watching the bar. Mark kept his eyes on the front entrance. Through the window, he could see Pete pacing behind the bar, clearly agitated. Then, Pete stopped and looked directly at Mark's car. Their eyes met through the glass. For a moment, Pete's mask slipped, and Mark saw raw, primal fear. Then Pete turned and hurried towards the back of the bar, disappearing through a side door. Mark's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. His blood turned to ice. It was a photo of Sarah's college ID card, the one she'd been so proud of freshman year. But it wasn't just the ID, it was a black-gloved hand holding it against a concrete, while the text underneath was short. Brutal. Come to Crossroads Bar basement alone in 20 minutes. If you want answers about your daughter, no police or she disappears forever. The days blurred together in the hospital. Mark barely left Sarah's side, watching the machines monitor her fragile life, listening to her mumbled apologies in her sleep, and gently reminding her, over and over, that she was safe, that he was there, that none of it was her fault. Dr. Patel and the therapists came and went, painting a cautiously optimistic picture of her physical recovery, but warning that the psychological wounds ran deep, maybe deeper than anyone could fully understand. The trauma Pete had inflicted wasn't just physical isolation or even the sexual abuse captured in those horrific videos Mark couldn't bring himself to watch yet. It was the systematic dismantling of her reality, convincing her for 6 years that her family had abandoned her, that the world had ended, that her suffering was normal, deserved even. Undoing that would take more than medicine. It would take time, patience, and a love Mark was determined to pour into her every waking moment. Detective Rodriguez visited regularly, her updates a mix of progress and grim reality. The investigation into Pete Garrison's network was vast. The dark web distribution ring he'd operated was international, and specialized units were working around the clock to track down every lead, every buyer, every connection. The videos, the thought of them, made Mark's stomach roil, were being seized and analyzed. Pete had kept meticulous records, ironically making the investigation easier. Among the most disturbing finds were detailed logs of Sarah's captivity, her weight, her compliance levels, even notes on her psychological state. It was like reading a sick inventory of his daughter's degradation, and the other victims. Mark asked one afternoon, his voice hoarse from days of whispered reassurances to Sarah. Rodriguez's face was grim. We found 2 more bodies, Mr. Thompson, hidden in the walls of properties Pete owned, women who went missing years before Sarah. We're working to identify them and notify their families. There were also records suggesting he had accomplices, people who helped move victims, maybe even helped with the videos. We're following every thread. Mark nodded, his jaw clenched. The scope of Pete's evil was staggering, but right now, his focus was a single, broken girl, sleeping fitfully in the bed beside him. The larger monster needed to be destroyed, but healing Sunny came first. Slowly, painstakingly, small moments of recognition began to flicker back. Sarah remembered the nickname, remembered his laugh, remembered fragments of her old life before the nightmare. These moments were precious, like finding tiny shards of light in a long dark tunnel. 2 weeks passed. Sarah was eating more, gaining back a little weight. Her eyes were clearing, focusing more often on the real world around her instead of the horrors inside her head. One morning, she looked at him for a long time, really looked, and whispered, "You're older." Mark laughed, a sound that surprised them both, tinged with relief and the overwhelming joy of hearing her voice engage with reality. "So are you, kiddo, 6 years. But you looked the same in my dreams. When I thought about you, I thought I was dreaming when I saw you that first time. I was always looking for you, Sonny, every day." She reached out a thin hand, and he took it. "The videos," he said, "people watched, that I was bad." Mark's heart shattered a little more, but he kept his voice steady, full of conviction. "No, baby, you were never bad. What he did to you, what he made people watch, that was evil, pure evil. You were the victim, you survived, and that takes incredible strength. Tears welled in her eyes. I couldn't fight. I couldn't remember how. You fought the only way you could, by surviving. That's the strongest fight of all. Later that day, Rodriguez brought news that sent a chill through the room. We've identified one of Pete's accomplices. A woman, worked as a cleaner, helped dispose of evidence, move things around the properties. She's agreed to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. She knew about you. Sarah knew you were alive. She said Pete bragged about how long he kept you, how perfect you were for his audience. She glanced at Sarah, whose eyes had gone wide with terror. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, Sarah interrupted, her voice stronger now, firmer. Tell me, please, I need to know. She said Pete was proud. He called you his masterpiece. Said the drugs made you compliant, that he had to adjust the dosages over time. Rodriguez's hands clenched into fists. She confirmed the videos were distributed widely. We're tracking the buyers. Sarah closed her eyes, a shudder running through her frail body. Mark moved closer, ready to hold her, but she opened her eyes again, and there was something different there. A spark, anger, not at him, not at herself, but at the monster who had done this. He lied, she said, her voice gaining strength. About everything. You, the world, my family, he said. He said I was bad, that I deserved it because I was too trusting, because I went with him that night, because I couldn't protect May. Mark's breath caught. May. The name hung in the air, connecting the two girls forever, one lost, one found. Sarah, listen to me. None of that was your fault. Pete manipulated you. He killed May. He planned it, executed it. You were innocent. You still are. I want to see him, she said suddenly. What? I want to see him. In court, I want to look at him and know he's real, that he's the one who did this, not some monster from a nightmare. I want him to see me, alive, and know that he failed. Rodriguez exchanged a look with Mark. Sarah, that might be very difficult. I know what he is, but I need to see it. I need to know it's over. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Pete Garrison, along with his accomplice, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The accomplice provided details that painted a full picture of Pete's operation, confirming the existence of other victims and the extent of the video distribution network. The media coverage was intense, but Mark and Sarah were shielded, their identities protected. The nightmare was finally, legally, over. Months passed. Sarah's recovery was slow, non-linear. There were good days where she laughed, remembered more, even ventured outside with Mark. There were bad days, filled with panic attacks, flashbacks, and overwhelming sadness. Therapy became her lifeline, and Mark became her anchor. The Chens, finally able to grieve May properly now that her killer was behind bars, reached out. They shared memories of May, helped Mark understand that his relief at Sarah's survival didn't diminish his sorrow for their loss. They had both lost daughters that night, just in different ways. One sunny afternoon, about a year after her rescue, Sarah stood on the hospital balcony, her first time outside in over a year, feeling the warmth on her face. Mark stood beside her, watching the world go by. She was still thin, still jumped at sudden noises, but her eyes were clearer, her voice steadier. Do you think I'll ever be normal again? She asked. Mark considered the question, thinking of the scars, visible and invisible, they both carried. I don't know if we get to be exactly who we were before, Sonny, but I think we get to be who we're meant to be now. Stronger, maybe. Different, definitely, but still us. Still together. She nodded, watching children play in the park across the street, a scene that would have been mundane before, but now felt miraculous. May would have liked this view. Yes, Mark agreed, his voice thick with emotion. She would have. They stood in silence for a while, absorbing the simple fact that they were free, that the sun was real, that the nightmare was truly behind them. The road ahead was long, filled with healing, rebuilding, and learning to live again after unimaginable trauma. But they were walking it together. Pete Garrison was gone, his lies exposed, his victims finally counted, their suffering finally acknowledged. Justice, while it couldn't undo the past, had ensured there would be no future victims. For Mark and Sarah, the hardest part was over. The fight for survival was won. Now began the long, difficult, but hopeful journey of reclaiming their lives. One day, one moment, one sunrise at a time. Sarah was alive. She was free. And that, after 6 years of darkness, was enough to start building a future from